are the Pollard Power Group, an after-school club that focuses on empowerment and confidence.
And today we're partnering with Miller Academy's Empowerment Coaching Group, where students interview and learn from local change makers.
Today we're here with Jay Spencer, the owner of French Press Bakery in Needham, who is a change maker in many ways.
Welcome, Mr. Spencer, and thanks so much for joining us today. How's it going?
It's going very well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you inviting me, and more importantly, I'm very happy that you have a group for empowerment. It's incredibly important, and whatever we can do in order to support you in the community, we'd love to do that.
Yeah. So Jay, we thought we'd ask you first about your work in the area or NUARI. Can you share some background on the organization?
Sure. NUARI is an amazing organization because what the goal is all about is making Needham as a community very welcoming, and setting a vision for how we should interact, about not having hate, discrimination, racism, and it comes in many forms. So being able to have an establishment that sets the goal for the town and says this is what we want, this is how we want our citizens, our businesses, and everybody to interact is incredibly powerful.
So, adding on to Honest's question, what have NUARI's big accomplishments?
So the biggest accomplishment thus far, and it was really happening most of last year, we had tons of meetings starting from November all the way through the beginning of the summer, was about establishing a vision in terms of what we wanted the town to be. When you talk about it being welcoming, when you talk about principles that you want to have, behavior, people feel uncomfortable, how should they approach that? Who should they approach? And how can we come together in order to make sure that we eliminate those biases that people think that may exist?
So it's kind of like a community where you can come together and talk.
Absolutely. It's all about dialogue, right? I mean, just as you may have a problem with one of your friends or something like that, somebody says something that's not appropriate, you need to feel comfortable and safe in a safe environment, kind of addressing that in a very respectful and professional way.
What are some of your big, to add on, what's some of your big areas of focus for 2022?
So if we look at 2022, it's all about creating accountability and ownership of the vision. So there are issues associated with policing and the housing area, with fair treatment of people, even within the schools, right? So our focus right now is really about establishing best practices on how we should operate, being able to create checklists and scorecards and training material so that we can roll it out to everybody, so that they understand how we should be interacting in a way that seems fair and unbiased to those that may feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. What's an action step that Pollard students could take in alliance with NUARI?
It's very interesting. When you ask me that question, I always think about my New York days, because I came here from New York, and there was a slogan back in the day: if you see something, say something. And for anybody, right?
We use that too. We use that too at our school.
Well, that's great, because I think, what does it mean to you? Like, when you hear it, how does it apply?
Kind of like if you see something that doesn't seem right to you, you should tell a trusted adult or tell someone that you know can help you.
Absolutely.
Like a lot of times it's like bullying.
It's the same thing, right? I mean, if some people may say you have a certain bias towards something else. It could be gender related, it could be racially focused, it could even be focused on your religion, right? So to be able to have that discussion and call out that behavior in a respectful way, but more importantly, have that person listen to you, is very impactful. And that's part of what we're trying to focus on right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that a saying from middle school can relate to real life.
Oh, it does, and more importantly, that it relates in more than just one way, right? It's incredibly universal.
To add on, what is one step that people in Needham in general could take to help out?
I think the first reaction that people have when someone says something that they don't disagree with it is to be very defensive. I think that we have to be open to hearing things that we may not want to hear, and to accept the views or the experience that someone has lived, and be able to talk about that in a meaningful way that doesn't make that person feel like they're being picked on, they've been disenfranchised, or that they should never have said it to begin with.
Yeah.
Because then it leads to other issues.
Like to make sure everyone's experience is valid.
Exactly.
Because everyone thinks something different than.
Exactly. And it may have not been your intent, right? But I think having that conversation is 9/10 of the battle in terms of understanding and relating and more importantly, making sure that person doesn't walk away, feeling that they've been treated badly.
Okay, now let's talk about the French press.
Let's do it.
What inspired you to start your own business?
It's interesting. My career has been varied throughout the years. I've done everything from, I started in restaurants. I then went to school, believe it or not, for mathematics and mechanical engineering. Finished my degree and went to work for, GE. They make the light bulbs, like the light bulbs that you see here. And then I went back to business school at the University of Michigan to my master's in operations strategy. From there, I kind of left off into consulting and banking. Did that for a very long time, but one of the things that struck me throughout the years, I was there for almost 10 years, throughout my travels, and I travel a lot to Europe, is food. And more specifically, the technical nature of it, the flavor, the profile, the culture, and everything else that you blend into it. So when I felt like I wanted to leave the corporate world, I wanted to come back to food and draw upon that cultural experience, if you will, through my travels, and really create what originally was a classic French patisserie. And we've kind of evolved a lot from there, but that was my original vision, if you will.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges as a restaurant owner?
Oh, there are a lot of challenges. It's interesting. I don't think everyone could have ever figured or at least imagined that we would be in a situation that we're in right now with the pandemic, right? I've never lived through a lockdown through my time, right? I don't think most people have lived through where you can't go anywhere. We created a space and a vision to where people could come in, interact with our staff, learn about our products, sit down and have a moment for yourself or a moment with others. When the pandemic came, that all went away. So how you eat, how you drink, how you meet up with your friends, is completely different now. So we've had to evolve our original model of come in, sit for a moment, enjoy yourself, there's no rush, to how do you get your products and services to someone who has no interest in talking to you. So, you probably would have gone into the cafe and you would have said, oh, well, I'll have this, right? Because through your travels, you went to France, you saw some sort of pastry, you wanted to try that pastry because it was here. That's completely different. Everything now, you ask me how does it transfer, we've used technology. So we have an online ordering system that's incredibly robust, which we didn't have before the pandemic, and it's kind of bridged that gap between creating that relationship to what we offer and what we can give people towards what's available at that time.
So a lot's changed, like now since the pandemic has changed something.
Oh, throughout I would say every day, if you're not moving and you're not thinking about how you can do things differently than the way you did them before, you're going to be out of business. And that's the way we approach it. So we've done things like our donut pop-up, right? So one day a week we do brioche donuts, where Tuesdays, by the way, if you haven't been there, but it's, we feature a different flavor. So this past week was banana caramel, we did s'mores the week before, we did a lemon meringue, so we've kind of gone through these various iterations of things to get people interested that we may have not done before, but we feel like it's a very valuable kind of community. Do you want me to stop, or are we good?
We're good.
Okay.
So, yes, you just kind of talked about how there has been, some benefits to the pandemic.
Very much so.
So are there any, products or services that have been a result of the pandemic?
I think our online ordering system has been the biggest advantage, right? Having people see what they would normally see in person online in the comforts of their home at 2 or 3 a.m. and then being able to kind of make that buy at that point is monumental, right? Previously, we were open for a set amount of time, right? 6:30 to 7, you come in, you get what you want, and it was available. But, to be able to see the advent of how people's buying behavior has changed has been unbelievable, right? It's actually increased our business because now, instead of them being restricted, well, I've got to get the kids off to school, I've got to get to work,
right.
I've got this appointment I have to make, and we see it because all the notifications come to my phone and email, right? People at midnight, at 3 or 4 in the morning, planning their day, they're putting an order in, and we see it as soon as we come in. So it's refreshing to be able to see how people are reaching out to us and how much they appreciate what we offer now.
Yeah. Speaking of kids, what advice would you give to your younger self?
That's an interesting one. I would tell you to never give up. Right? A lot of times you have a vision. I never considered myself a creative until recently, right? And I've always considered myself to be more of a technical person. But I think each day we always find a different way to do things. Like somebody says, you can't do this, or no, this resource isn't available. People along the way will always tell you no. I think you have to critically evaluate that and figure out how to make it work and listen, right? Listen to why they're telling you no and figure out a way in order to make it work. Because if I was told no when I was opening French press, it won't work in this location. These products will never sell. Or your pricing is too high. People didn't understand what we were doing. So we listened to that feedback in order to improve. And that's part of going back to your original question on the pandemic. If you're not changing all the time, you're stuck at one point in time. And rarely are we stuck at one point in time.
Yeah, so you can be creative and technical in your business.
Very much, you have to be.
Yeah.
And you have to play those hats almost every day.
Yeah. What are some challenges that you faced while creating your business, and how do you overcome them?
Absolutely. The biggest challenge, you can always have the best ideas, you can have the best people behind it. It's money, right? The biggest challenge that I had when I started, had a successful career in business, very well paid, but moving industries, no one wanted to lend me money to start the business. They said, you haven't been in this business for over 15 years. We have doubts about your ability to be able to do it. So there were a lot, again, after getting no from the major banks, getting no from like the governments, I was able to connect with Needham Bank, a very small community bank. They believed in what I was doing, and I was able to get funding. But if I would have stopped at like the first 6 no's, there would be absolutely nothing. But the biggest challenge really is having the financial backing to be able to make your dream come alive, because it's not enough just to get open. There's a lot more. You have to pay your people for the first 6 months. You've got to provide them insurance. You've got to there's a lot of things that go in there in order to make sure that you're actually providing a really nice environment, not only for people to come into, but for people to work.
Yeah. Do you think that it stops some people from creating their business?
Always. And a lot of people don't have that final person that comes and says yes. Some people have to rely on their family members. Some people have to rely on loans through other ways. It really is challenging to be able to get money to be able to launch something, but you got to stay at it. If you really feel that it's there, sometimes you've got to take on another job in order to pay for or invest in yourself. So it does become a challenge.
Yeah, it's like the saying, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Exactly.
What does your everyday look like as a restaurant owner?
It's an interesting challenge. So for me, it's all about maintaining the vision. The first thing that I do when I get into the cafe is look at our product. Does it meet the standards that I envision? So I'm at a point right now where I'm not the one that's actually doing the baking. I'm not the one that's actually making your beverage, right? We're at a gross point where, I started and I worked every single day physically doing those jobs in order to make everything happen. But you get to a point where your vision is now beyond you, and you have to rely on others in order to carry that out. So for me, the beginning of my day is really looking and critically evaluating, does everything meet the standard that I want it to be? And then it's about going back and talking to the staff, right? Giving them a positive, giving them something that needs to be worked on. So, and then after we move past that, it's about us looking forward. What clients are we working on? Who has special requests, right? It's about planning for the week ahead, the month ahead. What are we doing in terms of new menu items? Do we have any problems with meeting our production, supplies, or things like that? My efforts now are more focused on managing the people and managing the process of our business rather than doing the day-to-day work, because there are a lot of people now that I have that can help carry that out.
And we were learning about supply and demand in math. That's
Exactly.
what I think when you were saying that. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's interesting because my operational management background, right, probably one of the biggest problems right now is that there just isn't enough supply, right? I mean, as you know from your teaching, just in time is the thing that everybody has lived by, right? We're not going to produce a lot and have it sitting in warehouses. I'm going to produce enough just when you need it. So going back to the pandemic question, right? The biggest issue with the pandemic is that it's really created a problem with this just-in-time delivery system. It's great in terms of keeping costs down, but it's really created a problem in terms of having butter, having eggs, right? These essential ingredients that you want to have, that you need in order to make your product. So most of my time, believe it or not, is just trying to find goods and have them come in on time so that when you come in and you want that croissant or something else like that, it's going to be there.
Everything's
shut down.
Yeah, because like you can't just go to the grocery store and get like 50 sticks of butter.
Exactly.
What is your favorite item on the menu or something we must try?
Oh, that's a difficult one. You know, each day we produce probably a good 300 to 400 different items.
Wow.
And it ranges because we're an all-day dining cafe. So it starts off in the morning. So if I would say the morning, right? If I say so in the morning, probably my favorite item is the apricot puff pastry. So because we make everything right now, you know, we make everything from our doughs, using all natural ingredients and everything. So if you've ever made puff pastry, I encourage you to YouTube it, right? How to make puff pastry. It's a very technical, we talk about things being technical. It's a very technical task. And you know, you have to have the dough rise, you know, appropriately. So to be able to have that item, and then there's a French apricot, there's a little bit of cheese, and there's an apricot glaze. It's very light and delicate, not too sweet, which is the way I like things, and it has a good crunch to it. So for the morning, that's probably my best item. Doing for lunch, I'm a huge fan of our tartines, right? So I like the croque. It's an open-faced sandwich. We spend time making the bread. You know, we toast it. It's nice and warm. I put a little sunny side up egg on it. So that's probably my favorite midday. And then for dessert, only because I used to have them when I went to Paris a lot, is the restaurateur. It's a combination of like an almond sponge cake, a little coffee, buttercream, and chocolate ganache. And if you let it sit at room temperature for a very long period of time, it just melts in your mouth. So for me, it's
We
you know,
haven't
it's one of
eaten
those
lunch
things.
yet. We're all just like sitting here like.
I love the macaroons. They're so good.
Those are one of our popular sellers.
Awesome.
You know,
There's
very
so many
difficult to make.
options, yeah.
But so when you ask me what's my favorite, you know, it's challenging to pick one single item because quite frankly, it's dependent on my mood. You know,
Yeah.
what's going to lift me up at that particular
Sweet,
moment.
something salty.
Exactly.
Did anyone else want to say anything that they liked on their menu?
Oh, I really like the mochas.
Thank
I
you.
get the mochas with the oat milk, and then I really like that.
Yeah. I like the open face sandwiches too.
Excellent. Which one's your favorite?
The one with like the avocado and the egg and the lettuce. It's so good.
That's our number one seller, believe it or not.
We always get that. Me and my sister love it.
Excellent. Thank you.
So what are some of your like major goals for the next 5 to 10 years?
So you'll be the first to hear this. So some of you will know in our space there's an empty storefront that's next to us. We took the lease over for that, and we're opening what's called FP Studio and Kitchen. So it's a combination of a cooking studio / demonstration class / special event space, but behind that will be our commissary kitchen. So in cooking, when you need a bigger space and you're trying to serve more locations, you create what's called a commissary kitchen. So we supply to certain restaurants and bakeries throughout Boston our goods. So you may not know it because they're not branded French press, but we actually sell to them, and in turn they sell to the public just like we do in our retail cafe. So what we'd like to do over the next 5 to 10 years is not only grow that studio and kitchen, which is just going to start. It's been in the works for a very long time, but we'd like to not.
The pandemic probably slowed it down.
It did, but you know, timing is everything.
Yeah.
So the pandemic has created a lot of problems, but it's also created a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
So, you know, the business that was in there before has grown considerably, and they were able to move out. So in essence, we were able to seize on an opportunity, you know, that came to been able to allow us to bring our vision. A lot of times things won't come in when you want them. They're, you know, I feel that they come when you need them. So I feel like at this moment that we've really needed to have this space, and everything is kind of aligned in order for us to be able to do that. So, you know, we see more wholesale business, making more desserts for other restaurants, perhaps another location, but more importantly, we see an opportunity to have education. One of the reasons why I'm here is because we do believe in training people, right? We'll take, you know, we don't do it a lot because we had a small space before, but we believe that people that want to learn and know about classic French pastries or European style cooking, that you have an opportunity to either take some sort of recreational class where you just come with a couple of your friends and have some fun, or, you know, if you're serious about doing it as a profession, to be able to be taught that as well.
That sounds so cool.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
This isn't really a question, but like, what if you want to tell us, what are some things that you might learn to cook there?
So macaroons, as you said, are that is probably by far the biggest item that people ask us to do. And it's because it's incredibly technical, right? People always say baking is a science, but this product, if you will, this cookie, right? This French cookie.
Yeah. I've seen people try doing it.
Is both a cookie and an art. So being able to come in and spend a couple hours with us in order to make your own French macarons would be, something that we would see as probably one of our first, if not, first 5 classes to which we seek to put out. There are a lot of dinners that we've hosted previously, pre-COVID, right, or pre-pandemic, that we've hosted where people want to get together with their family members and so forth, and we'll cook a multi-course meal for them, and we'll do that as well. You may see that first, and the classes will kind of come thereafter.
Yeah. Are you gonna have? Sorry.
Yes,
are you
ma'am.
gonna have an online option too? I'm just wondering.
So,
for, like, businesses.
The short answer is that we've thought about it, and that we, because again, while we're building, it's cheaper to be able to put that capability in than to go back and have to do it later. So we've built that capability in order to do not only an in-person, but also an online option. We've got to get to the point where we have everything set up and it is working the way that we want before we start streaming. But it is something that you may see.
Yeah.
Never say never is my philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how do you come up with new items for your menu?
There is no one single source, right? It's about having discussions. It's about having experiences. It's about drawing upon our cultures, right? So culturally speaking, right, I have folks that I have been European trained, spent time in Europe, people that are Eastern European. I spent a lot of time in Spain and France. Those are my 2 favorite places to go, but with the pandemic, I haven't been able to get there. But, it's about saying, hey, I really want to try this dish, or I see this technique and I really like it, or I just like this favorite ingredient. We introduced a few months ago guava. I don't know if you've ever had guava, but guava is an exceptional fruit. It's not overly sweet, but it has a nice little mildly bitter taste to it. So I had that ingredient and I said, let's create a product that uses this ingredient. So one of the more popular ones, if you do your research, right, because we also do our research to be culturally appropriate, was guava and cheese. So we tried many different ways to do a guava and cheese puff pastry, but I wasn't quite happy with what we were doing. So then I said, okay, well, why don't we take what we have already, because a lot of it is also being cost effective. Let's take our puff pastry and figure out how we can incorporate the guava into it. So it's just trial and error. You just sit there and you think, and you say, okay, well, does this work, or will it work, or do I want to try it, or what is the texture? Will people buy it? Is also another consideration, because you could have the best product, but if nobody buys it as a business owner, you're not going to be around for too long.
Yeah.
So ideas come from many places, and I could even go to another restaurant and they do something completely like a niçoise, very classic French salad, but it's done a different way. You look at it and you say, oh, well, what kind of twist would I do to make it either more New England, because that's the region that we're in, and use some of the fresh produce and things like that we have. But I just try to look and figure out, okay, what do I want to represent for us, and then be able to push the envelope a little bit more in terms of how it's the way that I would interpret it.
Yeah. We'd like to close with some thoughts about Black History Month, which begins next Tuesday, February 1st. If you could have coffee at French Press with a Black notable who has made history from long ago or from the recent past, who would it be and why?
I think it's more than one person, to be honest with you. And I'll give you a few people that I find to be incredibly inspiring. Madam C.J. Walker, if you know her, she was an incredible technical creator, inventor / manufacturing person, but also focused on education. She would be a great person to talk about how do you take an idea that you had, because she had her own experiences. Part of coming up with new ideas is through your own experiences. She had her own experiences with her hair and with products, and that led her to create something. So for me, I find that very intriguing in terms of how you evolve something that helps you to become a benefit and a valued treasure for everybody. So she's one person I would include. A more recent person to which I like immensely is Amanda Gorman. All right, she's an incredible poet. She's very inspirational. I think for a person, for me, her maturity is far beyond her years. A lot of times we hire people in the cafe as young as 14, and people always ask me, "Oh, you hire 14-year-olds?" I said, "It's not about the age. It's about the maturity that you possess." So, as a person, that I would like to sit down with, I would love to be able to understand her path, how she thinks about things, and what drives her to look at things in a very objective way. She's a very impactful person in terms of change, but she does it in a very respectful way. And to me, that's incredibly powerful. The next person I would want just to have, a beer with or something like that is Barack Obama. He's, everybody knows him, so it goes without saying. But he's very inspirational, and I think it would be great to hear his challenges from his eyes, as opposed to being able to read or interpret what you would have thought. And then probably the last person, because I know I've probably gone beyond my one-person limit, is Nelson Mandela.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like to say or add?
I think that what you're doing with this group is absolutely amazing. So the ability to have a resource where you feel empowered, the ability to be able to have a resource where you can reach out to others for inspiration is amazing. So my advice to you is to reach for the stars. And no idea is too big in order to kind of set it out and say that this is your vision. If you believe in something, figure out a way to make it work. And you may be surprised. When I started French Press, there was a reporter from the Boston Globe. She came in and I told her, I said, sometimes you have to give someone something they don't need for them to realize that they needed it all the time. So your ability to be able to create whatever you do, right? Whether it's a corporate job, whether it's your own business, whether you're just going about everyday life, figure out a way to be impactful and to contribute in a very meaningful way. And always feel that you're enough, because you are.
Thank you. Well, thank
My
you
pleasure.
so much for meeting with us, Mr. Spencer. We really enjoyed having this conversation with you and learning more about NUARI and French Press.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.